1984, as we're going to talk about later on, that golden year, is that when it all started downhill?
For wrestling or society? What are you asking exactly?
Well, it might be both. Because in 1984 was the pivotal point in the wrestling business where we all got too big for our britches and started drawing too much money and attracted the attention of too many outside interests. And boom, things take off for a while and it all goes to And now, honestly, I got to say the WWE, the big story here is not a wrestling war anymore. It's how much bigger are they going to get? And with AEW, it's how much lower are they going to go?
Well, we'll find out when we.
Do you have any measurement of the metric of those things?
Of the limbo rate for AEW and WWE?
Limbo. Yeah, hello. Can you go, baby?
I guess the other question is, in a perfect world where AEW figured things out, where Tony Khan either figured it out somehow miraculously now, or someone was put in place that could figure it out, and it took a little while, but you turned things around, how big could AEW be? Like, what's their limitation on how big they could be?
Who else is left to sign?
You could buy TNA or
who they got? That's the game changer, as the kids say these days. Who they got over there?
Well, I mean, they got people. The people they got that are good are now appearing on NXT.
Well, but the point is, right now, and we can talk about this. The WWE, when we talk about SmackDown here, little boy, they're getting the most out of the least, because I had to prop my eyeballs up with toothpicks for most of that program. I don't know. Was it thrilling to you? Did it tickle your taint in a way the classic episode of goddamn wrestling should tickle your various orifices?
Yeah, I don't know if that's how wrestling hits me, but no, I moved it from the big TV to the small monitor in the corner just because I realized I just have to monitor this. I don't really have to watch it.
You made them go sit in the corner.
I put them in the corner. I put the Met game on TV.
Timeout. You gave them a timeout for being. But meanwhile, they're making more money than the federal government. They're printing the money, and they don't have to do shit.
But that's
except make stars.
But that's like WWF in the late 80s when everyone criticized it because of the slow pace of a lot of the matches. And again, those guys were taking every kind of drug and they were on the road more than these guys today could ever dream of. And back then, the schedule was crazy too. It wasn't like, all right, it'll be the Northeast for the next 6 weeks. It was like Chicago, then LA, then Minnesota, then Texas, and then back to New York. It was just all over the place. There was no rhyme or reason to the schedule at that time. And WWE was doing great business. You could always find something to say they could have done more, but in the late 80s, they were doing great business, presenting a style that to a lot of longtime fans, especially fans before the industry completely changed in 1984, give or take, it was somewhat boring. There weren't a lot of angles on TV. Every year for sweeps, you got some main event matches. Saturday night's main event was good whenever that would pop up, but it was a fairly slow pace to get what you wanted, what you knew you were going to get. It felt like forever for the Ultimate Warrior to get his hands on Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan. And it was WrestleMania to SummerSlam. That wasn't really that long at all. They built it up so perfectly that it really meant a lot. Today, you watch WWE TV, specifically SmackDown, even Raw, but it's 3 hours. But SmackDown, they give you very, very little. A lot of matches that no one seems to be invested in with guys who are fine. It's just no one's invested in them or their characters, maybe even less so than a lot of those mid-card guys in the late 80s. But they give you enough that everyone seems to be leaving happy. So maybe that is the right method. As a businessman, as a promoter, why give more than you have to, where if you keep going at this pace, you'll be able to keep doing this for a long time?
Well, exactly. And what they've perfected is, instead of in the old days when they didn't have this much television, when it was only an hour show on syndication or, whatever the case, they perfected now. They give you a bunch of shit in the middle of what you would have seen then anyway that you thought was slow paced. But now they talk about everything and react to everything a lot more in the middle. They're still doing nothing, but they're giving people a lot to say. And then eventually something happens. But that's, again, we talked about it the other day. They're doing fine on stars and stars they can pull out and stars they can have returned. But with AEW, who is left to sign? The question I said or asked was in terms of anybody that every time they sign somebody that is supposed to be the game changer and oh my God, this is going to be a mega. Within 3 weeks is and the more money he spends, it seems like the less time they stay over, except for Will Ospreay.
But that, again,
he's doing well.
No matter what you think of any of the talent that you're referencing, that's not on the talent. That's on the booker. That's on Tony.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So now that there are not these names, these internet darlings, these potential, superstars, these, do you know of anybody they could possibly steal legitimately, realistically, credibly from the WWE?
I don't know. Because steal is an interesting word. Because,
well, I mean, steal in terms of their contract is up and they take them instead of this re-signing.
Basically, someone who's going to turn down WWE, not someone who WWE doesn't want. But you're saying someone who would turn down WWE, which they would only do if Tony threw stupid money at them. Is there anyone that would make a big difference for?
And is there anybody coming up in the near future that anybody's talked about?
And the reality is that industry-wide, in the biggest locker room in the world, people talk about Tony. They talk about his behavior. They talk about what that company's like. They talk about the chaos. Everyone who comes out of that company, even people who have no problem with Tony or management, say that it was chaotic, it was unorganized, there was a lot of frustration. Like, to the man, every single person. There's a reason for that. And unless they're going to ever get structure, it's not going to change, and they're never going to get structure because Tony's not going to let go of this thing. That's the only reason it's here is for Tony to hold on to it and jerk it off.
Hey, come on now. It's a family show.
Back to my original point, or my original question for you. How big could AEW be? WWE's doing it this way. AEW's business model, or AEW's formatting, seems to be give people lots of matches. They can go long, just people in matches. AEW does what they think and what some wrestling journalists, for some reason, back up. That they're doing effective angles, effective storylines. A lot of us think that maybe it's the exact opposite. But if that changed and you're able to change the creativity from the top, and again, your personal feelings about people aside.
Yes, I'll be serious.
Kenny Omega's coming back. At some point, you would think, unless he's just never going to wrestle again. That's a guy who's been a main eventer in AEW, someone who has made a difference in the past. He's been gone a while. He's been gone a long time, so there's a chance you could do something fresh with him, although more than likely he's just going to want to work with his friends, and everyone knows that. But you have him, you still have MJF, and he's still young. You have Will Ospreay, who hasn't been there long enough for them to fuck him up. There are other people who have been off TV, like a Wardlow, who could be off TV, like whoever you want there, so you can repair them. The issue isn't just having stars and then putting them into AEW. It's the TV. Again, it doesn't have to be WWE. WWE is doing shows that are centered around these big angles and these big storylines that start at the beginning. There's a point in the middle where everyone pops up and you know that they're in the back. And then at the end, you get the big crescendo. AEW doesn't have that. That's the thing that has to change. I said it about Will Ospreay the other day during the match review. Will Ospreay is a great wrestler. He's never been produced, either as a wrestler, but more importantly, as a character in a promo for American wrestling television. AEW, they really want to try to turn things around. It can't be, let's double down on being where the best wrestle. It has to be a better version of American wrestling TV with people and characters and storylines people care about. The wrestling on TV has to be secondary. The wrestling on pay-per-view is what you build up to.
Here, I think, is the problem that they've got, which is which is always the problem when you try to take, and I did it with Ring of Honor, when you try to take a promising indie promotion and try to get it over to a bigger audience on widespread television in whatever form or fashion that takes. To make it in any way more palatable for a bigger audience, you have to, if, for lack of a better term, turn down the fucking indie level and turn up the logic level. You have to slow down and explain things to people. You have to build angles that indie shows were all about having the greatest match in the world, tearing the fucking house down. And wow, I wonder what they're going to do next time they come, whenever. But a major league level is having a good show, giving everybody their money's worth, and leaving the people walking out figuring, yes, I want to see this next time, because you've led to something. The indies don't do that. So you alienate the audience that's part of a private club that knows everything about these people because they've seen them in, dandelion wrestling in Japan. And they've read about them on the internet. And you're trying to sell these people to an audience from scratch that just wants to know the basics. Do I like this guy or do I not like him? Who's he mad at? Whose side is he on? Why are these people fighting? The normal people that will enable you to get a national television audience. And this is, I don't know, to answer your question, whether you can take AEW with the platform that it's built itself on and make it in any way mainstream to where the regular fans are, because you can't follow it. There are no stories. You can't trust anybody. They all fight each other. Everybody hurts everybody. Real or imagined. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've been saying it for a while pretty vociferously. I wonder if you agree. I say that the commentating team on Dynamite is a major barrier of entry for a lot of people. And to what you said before about inserting more logic in, explain things better, you need someone to do the explaining.
Yes.
Do you think am I over the top when I say that the commentating team hurts the show and they need something better for that specific reason, or do you agree?
No, I agree, because the same thing we were saying 5 years ago. I mean, they had Jim Ross at one point, but the 3-man deal that Tony insists on is cluttered. Tony right now just sits there and I guess takes notes to stooge on other people. Taz seems disinterested because if he can get something going, he's got to work it in with a shoehorn and Vaseline. But the problem is the clown in the fucking main chair. He pretended to be a pro wrestler on his own fucking shows 20 years ago, and now he's on national television. And apparently is a very ugly man because he won't take a fucking mask off. And it looks like a clown that nobody's ever heard of, because that's what it is. And he did mark commentary on VHSs in his basement for other marks when they had their tape trading out of Rosita or wherever. And it's just ridiculous. And he couldn't sell pussy on a troop train, much less get these guys over when the booking is in a state it's in to begin with.
You need strength in your lead commentator. We've seen various different versions of it. Bill Watts, Vince McMahon, Lance Russell, Jim Ross, Gordon Soley, very different, every one of them. But you need
authoritative,
but just some kind of strength, not someone who fumbles over everything they say and who sounds like a joke and who talks in a way that no one else really would talk about. No one talks like that. No one wants to hear anyone talk like that. And you need your wrestling commentator to really hammer the point home. I said it during that MJF Ospreay review. Imagine if that match had had Jim Ross at his peak doing it, or anyone else. It would have elevated the match. The commentators hurt the match. They didn't elevate it. And the lead commentator is the main culprit.
Well, and Ian Riccaboni, where'd he go? And there's a few other people out there that could have a halfway decent swing at trying to announce that program, but no, the best friend of the best friend who pretends to be an announcer of the EVPs who pretend to be wrestlers is the guy that's immovable from that. Do you think if he ever got like a severe case of projectile diarrhea or something that they would actually let somebody else do the show, or would they cancel it and just air Mighty Mouse reruns?
They'd put Shivani in the lead chair. It'd be the worst option of all.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, because that's on Saturday night, and that's fucking working out for them.
AEW has been the biggest exposure that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's style was not sustainable for a large audience. It was fine for an audience that wanted to buy DVDs still and pack into a tiny room in California.
There's nothing the matter with DVDs.
No, that's fine, but it drove away viewers. The Young Bucks drive away viewers.
It was like some comedy club that had a hot run out there, right? Where they have all the finest stand-ups come in and fucking do a show for 400 people, but you try to take the individual sum of the parts out on the road and they don't fucking play.
It's like Dane Cook. There was a minute where every girl I knew thought Dane Cook was the funniest comedian of all time. And I'm like, really? Have you seen any other comedian ever? Because he's not even in the top 100. And I'd watch his stuff thinking, all right, the kids think this is funny. Let me see it. And it was garbage. And pretty soon the world caught up to that. And that's what it was with the Young Bucks. They had a moment. They blew up amongst, not the women, but the men who were like women, I guess. I don't know who they blew up amongst the most. But it wasn't sustainable because they weren't smart enough to understand how to propel themselves to the next level. They only understood how to take Tony's money.
I disagree with you there. They were smart enough to figure out how to propel themselves to the next level. They just knew they could fucking do it because they had neither the size, the fucking talent, the intelligence, or what. So they instead figured out how to propel themselves to the next level of Tony Khan's checkbook.